تقدمان دروس المذاكرة والدعم لصالح سنوات الخامسة ابتدائي، الرابعة متوسط، والثالثة ثانوي.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm here, your teacher of English. I'm waiting for you. Are you listening to me or watching me? I'm here to give you a lesson as usual, and we carry on our series of lessons about Unit 5. We are a family. If you ask about me, I'm fine. What about you? I missed you a lot. Now, Bismillah ala barakatillah, we are going to start. Now, try to prepare your copybooks and your pens. You are going to write with me some grammar rules about dynamic and stative verbs. Maybe you have heard about it, these dynamic and stative verbs. Now, the lesson is easy. Maybe we are daily, or when we use our English, we are going to use them, but we don't know where we put these verbs concerning conjugation. It means if I use it for conjugate it in the present simple or in the progressive. Here, I'm going to remind you that this lesson for all the streams back exams. We start dynamic and stative verbs. We can divide English verbs into 3 groups. We can divide English verbs into 3 groups. The first group of verbs, dynamic verbs. The second group, stative verbs. And the third one, mixed verbs. I'm going to explain. We start with the first group. When we say dynamic, it means progressive verb. Progressive verb. I'm going to give here the explanation, then I'm going to raise it. Now, it's a progressive verbs. When I say dynamic verb, it's continuous verbs. When I say dynamic verbs, it's an action verbs. When we say progressive, continuous, action verbs, it means, or it is related to physical movements. Physical movement. I repeat, dynamic verbs, progressive verbs, continuous verbs, or action verbs. Physical movement. It is dynamic. Dynamic. We have movement here. The explanation of this verb, most verbs are in this group dynamic verbs. Dynamic verbs. Usually involved an action or an active process. For example, the verb to play, the verb to eat, and the verb to speak. When boys are going to play outside, it took them an effort, and they have here physical movement. They are acting, and they have plenty of time. It's a progression here to play. We cannot play in 1 minute or 2 minutes. Now, boys children like to play outside for a long time, when we eat also and when we speak also. Now, we can use dynamic verbs to form the continuous tenses. It means all these verbs except this ing rule or eng rule, continuous. I remind you that the continuous is. Any sentence has a subject, a verb, an object. Subject, for example, he, and the verb to be, here, to play, sorry, he is playing outside, for example. Now we are going to divide. He is a subject, is playing is the whole verb. It is composed of to be, is, conjugated in the present simple, and the playing is a verb plus ing form. This is the continuous, or the present continuous. And we have also the past continuous. Here, I'm playing, she was eating, and she will be speaking. Now, we recapitulate. I repeat, dynamic verbs. Most verbs in this group, dynamic verbs, usually involved an action or an active process. When we say dynamic verbs, it's progressive. When we say progressive, it's continuous. It means here we have an action. We have a physical movement, and here we have some examples. Now, we move to the second group of verbs. Second one. Now, stative verbs, we have a lot of things to say according to these stative verbs. When we say stative verbs, it's the opposite of dynamic verb. I'm going to give you an explanation or definition. Stative verbs are used, write with me, to talk, write with me. Stative verbs are used to talk about stative or states and situations that continue for a long time. Now, we cannot use stative verbs to form the progressive. This is another rule. Now, we cannot use stative verbs to form the continuous form. I have said before that dynamic verbs must be in the continuous form. Now, contrary or opposite to stative verbs, now stative verbs cannot be in the ing form. We cannot add the ing. By the way, although they are not correct grammatically, a lot of native speakers use them to refer to active process. For example, they say, I'm loving it. I'm loving it is wrong. I'm going to explain more. Here, when we say stative verbs, I'm going to raise this. When we say stative verbs, here are common non-action verbs. Non-action verbs. First, we have verbs of senses. We have the verb to see, to look, to appear, to resemble, to seem, hear, smell, feel, taste, and we have the auxiliary to be. For example, in the auxiliary to be, he is good. We cannot say another situation instead of he is good. Now, he is good. It's the present simple. I repeat, in stative verbs, we have senses or verbs related to senses. When we say related to senses, it means perception. استقبال, I think. Now, when I see, I'm going to see something. When I look, I'm going to look to something. It appears to me, it resembles, it seems, it hears, etc. Now, all these verbs are stative verbs. We cannot put them in the progressive. We must conjugate them in the present simple. The present simple. We have another category of thoughts. We have understand. We cannot say I'm understanding. No, I understand, he understands, etc. I know. I cannot say I'm knowing. I know. Believe. Although native speakers can say I'm believing in you, American English, I think, but it's grammatically wrong. Now, when we use it in a conversation, you can use it, but in grammar, in your exams, don't put these verbs, stative verbs, in the progressive. You must conjugate it in the present simple. I carry on. We have the verb to believe, doubt, feel or think. I cannot say I'm thinking. I think, consider, realize, recognize. Suppose I'm going to select some verbs. For the verb think, you know that English language is full of exceptions. And we have many situations that we are going to be put in, here we have an ambiguity. We have two meanings or two things. For the verb to think, we can put think in the present form, present simple. For example, I think that he is good. Here, the meaning of think is I believe. The second one, progressive, it means we put the verb in the ing rule or the ing, present continuous. For example, I'm thinking of buying it. I'm thinking of buying it. Here, it is merely or simply the meaning of to think. Yes. We have another example of look. Look is a stative verb. The first one we can use it as seems. He looks strong. He looks strong. And the second one, the second use of look, you have look, simply look. He is looking out of the window. He is looking out of the window. Out of the window. Now, I repeat, stative verbs. We have sensitive verbs. These are the sensitive verbs: to see, to look, to appear, to resemble. And I'm always repeating the words or the lesson in order to make you or to give you the opportunity to write down, if you hear me, to write down these verbs. Senses, stative verbs of senses, perception. See, look, appear, resemble. See, hear, smell, feel, taste. Now, thoughts, we have understand, know, believe, doubt, think, consider, realize, and suppose. We have feelings. Feelings. Now, feelings, you all know the verbs of feelings, verbs of emotions. We have like, own, like, dislike, love, hate, mind, prefer, want, appreciate, need, etc. And we can use mind into the negative and the affirmative form. For the negative form, for example, I don't mind. For the other form, it's, for example, when we ask, would you mind? Would you mind to give me, I don't know what? Then we have, I'm going to raise, we have also verbs of perception. Verbs of perception. Perception related to stative. Relationships. Relationships. When we say relationships, I mean possession. Possession. Own. Have. The verb to possess, يمتلك, to possess, and contain, include. Write them down, please. I'm going to raise. And this is all about, now, stop here, all about the stative verbs. You know that stative verbs has a lot of examples and categories of the verbs. Now, senses, thoughts, feelings, relationships, and we have also measurement, like the way cost, equal, measure. For example, I'm measuring the table, depending on, rely on, require, etc. Now, we move to the third one, the mixed verb. Now, from its name here, I think that the verbs that accept to be a dynamic and at the same time a stative. One time active and another time stative. Here, for the mixed verb, have two meanings. These mixed verbs have two meanings. Have two meanings. One is dynamic. And the second one is stative. Stative. I'm going to write the verb to look. Look. Now, for look, an example, I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you. Here, I have used the verb to look as a dynamic verb. It means I put it in the progressive, in the progressive, or I add the ing form, the continuous form. This is one way. To look can be stative also. At the same time, for example, we have an example. You look happy. I'm happy today to teach you. I look happy. Look here, we put it in the present simple, not in the progressive, because it plays the role of, as we have said, stative verb. Now, we recapitulate. In order to have an exercise, lovely one. Now, we can divide English verbs into 3 groups: dynamic verbs, stative verbs, and mixed verbs. For dynamic verbs, we put the verb in the continuous because it involved an action. It is an active process. For stative verbs, we have sub-categories. We have senses, the verbs, which describe the sense, the verb to see, to look, to appear, to resemble, to seem. All these verbs cannot be put in the progressive. Try to remember this. It is wrong to write or to say, I'm seeing you, I'm seeing, I'm looking. It's wrong. We cannot, because these are stative verbs and of senses. Another category, thoughts, understand, know, believe, for example, doubt. Also, we cannot put them in the progressive form. We cannot put it in the continuous form. We put it only in the present form. Now, for this unit, we are a family. I emphasize, I'm focusing on the verbs of feelings, like, dislike, love, hate, mind, prefer, want, need. When we want to describe your emotions, for example, in your written expression in your back exam, they want to ask you, describe your feelings and emotions about something else. Now, we cannot use these verbs of feelings, like, dislike, love, in the progressive. We cannot put, for example, I'm loving, I'm liking, I'm hating. It's wrong. We put them only in the present simple. Now, we move to the third one. I'm recapitulating only mixed verbs. Now, these verbs, they can play the role of a dynamic. I'm looking for you, or at you, sorry. And we can take the role of a stative verb. You look happy. I'm going to give you an exercise. Now, in this exercise, we are going to put the verbs into the correct form. Into the correct form. Now, she to have a headache. Now here we put the verb in the present simple. Now she has a headache. The chief always tastes the food, present simple. We are having a good time. I'm thinking too much about you. Now Karim wants to eat. Yes. I don't see. I'm not saying. And they don't have. He thinks you are smart. And I need some water now. And I hear. And thank you. It's all about this lesson. an interesting lesson. Try to revise it again, to see it again. It's about dynamic and stative verb. Where do we put them? And how can we use them? For dynamic, use the progression. For stative, use only the present simple. Now, I thank you another time. It was a pleasure to teach you, to be with you. Next time, inshallah. Goodbye.